Aren't those sweet-looking puppies? Good morning.
Puppies all dressed up for church.
Right. Good morning, Unity of Delaware. Yeah, Buddy and Bella have dressed up for church today. They have their ties on because they know it's a special time of the week. Right, Bella? Right, Buddy? Yeah, so they're really focused on the service today. And I think it's right about 10:30, isn't it, Joe?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so here we are. Service has begun. Thanks for joining us today. Bella, stay right there so they can see your pretty face. All right, you ready for your treats? All right. Okay. Oh, wait. Buddy, sit right there. Good job. Good job. Oh, good. Thank you for putting your ties on today. Can you see them?
Okay. Oh, yeah. I can't find it.
Sit down, Bella. Sit. Okay. A couple more.
They're more dressed up than I am.
Oh, yeah. You didn't put your tie on, did you? Okay. All right. Is that pretty good? Buddy looking right up here at the camera. Okay. So are we live, Joe?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
I just can't find it.
Well, many thanks to Buddy and Bella for putting their ties on today. Come over here. You want just a couple more before you head off for your morning naps? You give dogs treats and they'll follow you anywhere. Okay. All right. Yeah, we got those ties for them a couple years ago. They were barking all the time. We got them ties and we called them Barkin' and Barkin'. Canines at law.
Attorneys at law.
Canines at law. Barkin' and Barkin'. All right, thanks, Barkin' and Barkin'. You can go now. All right, we'll have more of those later, okay? Good job. Okay. Good job. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Unity of Delaware friends and our friends everywhere. Whoever's able to join us this morning, we're always so glad to see you on Sunday mornings. Always glad to hear your comments and also get those prayer requests afterwards as they come in. And of course, this is right here in our home, so if you hear dog barking or dog tussling in the other room or anything like that, it's just normal sounds at our house of having dogs at play. So in a minute, we're going to have Joe come over here. And I think he's just trying to call it up on his laptop so he can kind of see things coming in. My theme today is about being alone, the art of being alone. So we thought of this classic song by the Beach Boys. I'm sure many of you
Good morning.
Going to remember as well as we do, called In My Room. What a beautiful song that was. Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys. So sing along with us.
There's a world where I can go and tell my secrets to. In my room, in my room, in my room. In this world I lock out all my worries and my fears. In my room. In my room, in my room, do my dreaming and my scheming, lie awake and pray, do my crying and my sighing, laugh at yesterday. Now it's dark and I'm alone, but I won't be afraid. In my room, in my room, in my room. Thank you, Brian Wilson.
Thank you, Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. We'll do a couple more songs here in a moment. Again, just a reminder, you can send in prayer requests in the comments section, or can always go to the top of our UnityDelawareOhio.org website and send a prayer request in that way. We are a community of prayer. We welcome comments. It's always a delight to see your comments coming in. They're very encouraging to us as we do church in this new way on Sunday mornings. And like to see some of the comments between people too, greeting one another. It's almost like a Sunday morning at our church. Not exactly, but as close as we can get virtually, I think. So that's always a joy. And as always, just remember that if you don't happen to catch the live feed in the morning, you can always catch it later on Facebook, or Joe also posts it on YouTube for later viewing. So thank you for joining us this morning. It's a beautiful, beautiful spring day here. After the rain of last night, everything is so green and gorgeous, and the sun is out, so we have a lot to give thanks for. So before an opening prayer together, we're going to do another kind of a prayerful song. A favorite of ours, and of course it's by the wonderfully talented Eddie Watkins Jr., and some of you are going to know it. It's a beautiful song really about that inner space that he talks about as the garden.
There is a garden where dreams come true, a beautiful garden where God's grace blooms. There is a garden in the tree, a beautiful garden where love is sown. And in this place of light and love, you can have everything that you're dreaming of. There is a garden where dreams come true, a beautiful garden, that garden is you. And in this place of light and love, you can have anything that you're dreaming of. There is a garden where dreams come true, a beautiful garden, that garden is you. Such a beautiful garden, that garden is you.
Let's close our eyes for just a moment and feel our deep connection to that place in us, that garden, that center of ourselves where we know we are one with that power and presence we call God, that we are in deep touch with God's peace, God's abiding love, God's healing, renewing energy. That place in us where we know we are deeply connected with it in an unbreakable and eternal way. We know this truth for everyone in our community this morning. We know this truth for living beings everywhere. There is a garden within each one of us, a sacred place where we know our oneness with the living God. And we know that all is well. So it is. Amen. Thank you for joining us this morning. Such a beautiful song by Eddie Watkins Jr. We hope to have him up here this summer. We had him scheduled around the beginning of June, and we're just kind of watching how things are going right now to see whether that winds up being a workable time. It'll probably be a bit later than we originally planned, but we'll get you up here, Eddie. Thanks all of you for joining in. I meant to start with a little bit of humor. People have been sending me some bits of humor, and I thought these were funny. You know what dog lovers we are. And this was some humor Maria, I think Perini sent in for us. Thank you, Maria, on new breeds of dogs that are being considered for recognition by the AKC. And some interesting hybrids. For instance, the Collie and the Lhasa Apso is going to be called the Collapso, a dog that folds up for easy transport. And then there's the Pointer and the Setter. They're going to breed for the Poinsettia, a traditional Christmas pet. Good gift for Christmas, right? And then the Great Pyrenees and the Dachshund will be the Pyrodox, a puzzling breed. Yeah. Or the Pekingese and the Lhasa Apso for the Picasso, an abstract dog. I like that one. Or the Irish Water Spaniel plus the English Springer Spaniel, which will be the Irish Springer, a dog fresh and clean as a whistle. Or there's the Bloodhound and the Labrador, and that'll be called the Blabador, a dog that barks incessantly. They're also looking at the Collie and the Malamute, which will be the Commute, a dog that travels to work. And finally, like this one, the Bull Terrier and the Shih Tzu will be the Bull Shih Tzu, a gregarious but unreliable breed. I like those. Thank you, Maria, for sending those in.
That's funny.
I hope you guys got a couple chuckles out of them like I did. So we're kind of talking, I've been thinking a lot about this time where we're all spending so much more time being alone, on our own, and how that's feeling for us. I hear a lot of commentary about that, a lot of people talking about how that feels. It's more difficult for some than others, and I hear people talking about that as mostly a matter of whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, and it's harder maybe for extroverts, but I think that's only part of it. I think there's more, it's not that simple, there's more to it if we reflect on our comfort level with aloneness. So I thought we could just sort of share some ideas and some discoveries perhaps about that this morning for a few minutes. I don't think being alone is the same as being lonely, and I think we all know that from our experience. Being alone means simply, it means isolated, means separated from others, something we're all dealing with a good deal right now. Being lonely means having a feeling of bleakness or desolation. Those aren't the same things. You can be alone and still feel in touch with your creative energy, still feel connected to others, still feel free and peaceful and content. And so that's what I wanted to kind of explore some ideas about. I think it's, in a way, it's a critical life skill to learn how to be alone with oneself. And that's something worth reflecting on in this time, I think. Have we learned to be comfortable alone with ourselves? Or is that something that maybe is a work in progress for us that we want to kind of keep looking at? I've been looking at a new book by Stephen Batchelor called The Art of Solitude. And he says the art of being alone is about being comfortable with ourselves so that our creative energy, freedom, and peace of mind are always within reach, however isolated we might be. That's interesting. I think that's something to reflect on. How do we practice that, and can we teach our children that? One of the quotes I picked up in his book was, it said that if we don't teach our children how to be alone, they'll only know how to be lonely. And I thought, well, that's something to really think about. Is it a skill we can learn and practice and pass on to others, that skill of being alone and comfortable with that, where we're still in touch with all our creative energy and peace of mind? So how do we make that alone time nourishing? How do we, what's that art of being alone all about? I came up with 3 ideas, and I think they're happening for the most part kind of spontaneously right now. The first one had to do with creating sacred space. I was thinking about that as one of the things we do to enrich our alone time. We enhance our space. We pay attention to it. We make it more sacred for ourselves. We might have flowers and candles out. We might, and I see a lot of people right now tending their yards and their homes, and they're in new ways because they have the time for it. They're really paying attention to the beauty of their home and the space they share with their family, perhaps. And it really caused me some reflection about, do you remember your room when you were a kid? Do you remember, in your room, what that felt like and what a sacred space that was? Particularly in the teen years, because I think it's in those teenage years when we're really developing a sense of our inner world, our inwardness, and reflecting on that and searching that out and spending time alone in our room or in our part of the room or whatever our space is that we have. I remember that as being very sacred space, my room. I bet you remember that too. I don't know how your sacred space was decked out. I remember my stereo and my albums. I'd study those album covers and liner notes when you got a new album by somebody. Do you remember that? And posters on the walls. There were lots of posters for sale in the late 60s, early 70s with inspirational pictures and quotations like, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life." That's the first time I heard that, back in, 68 or something like that. There was my diary or journal I always had there. I had candles. I created a sacred space there. I think we all need to do that, not just kids. I think we adults need to claim our sacred space in our homes, and maybe each of us have a certain sacred place that's our spot. I was reading an article about in the challenge of homeschooling and families spending so much time together nowadays. Sometimes a family member needs to say, I need my space in some way, and they're carving out special places. One mother with an autistic child, a highly functioning autistic child, said her daughter asked for if she could convert like a stairwell into her safe place. And she said, go at it. And tapestries were hung and string lights put up, and special sacred objects that her daughter loved were brought in, and it became a very special sacred space for her that's nourishing, where she could feel that being in touch with herself in a nourishing way. Sacred space. Second one, and I think again it's happening automatically, getting our creative energy out, finding ways to use our creative energy in projects, in art, in creation of art, in making something. People are doing it everywhere now, spontaneously. It's like we have the time, there's an opening here, and our creative energy wants to get out. Whatever that song is in us, Wayne Dyer used to say, don't let the music within you, you don't want to die without getting that out, that music in you, whatever form that takes. Some of you know from regular Facebook folks, Joe and just recently collaborated on a new song. Our good friend Linda Blaine did lyrics for it. Dave Clutter chimed in on it. And the amazing Eddie Watkins Jr. Put bass and drums on it. He said he Watkinized it, which added a heck of a lot, as you can imagine. But it's called Uncertain Times, and in parentheses, Let Love Lead. You can find it on SoundCloud or on Joe or Linda's Facebook pages probably, but it's a wonderful collaborative effort. People doing from their own homes, sending in tracks, and Joe mixing it in the studio. We're seeing a lot of that among musicians, this kind of creative, collaborative activity. But people are doing all kinds of creative things. A neighbor this week was telling me she's going to start taking ukulele lessons online. There's people taking guitar lessons. Fender offered like 1,000 free guitar lessons to folks. People are doing all kinds of creative things as a way of enriching their alone time. That's wonderful. So that's the second one, creative outlets. The third one, and I think this is the one that maybe some of us need more work on, and I think maybe we all do. It's a kind of a work in progress, but getting comfortable with our inner life, with our inner thoughts and emotions. This can be a really powerful time to do that. We've got some enforced time of isolation there can be maybe no better time than now to really look at our relationship with our inner lives, our thoughts and feelings, how comfortable we are dealing with those, managing those. Because that's one of the things you hear most often, like when people struggle with meditation or just time alone. The real challenge of it, the crux of it, is being comfortable with the thoughts and feelings that arise in us that can sometimes feel overwhelming, and perhaps especially in a time of uncertainty and anxiety, like many people are feeling right now around the globe. So this can be a wonderful time to practice that because we don't get a lot of training in it. In our educational systems, in our culture, we don't get much training in how to deal with our inner life. In Stephen Batchelor's book, The Art of Solitude, he talked about how when he was a high school kid, he would sit in class, whether it was math or English literature or French or whatever it was, he'd sit in class, this was in the UK, and he'd think to himself, why isn't anybody talking about what really matters? Why aren't they teaching us anything about what we feel inside? What's going on inside us? And that really resonated with me. I thought, why indeed? I remember wondering that myself as a kid. It's like it's a taboo subject in our educational system, in our culture really. It's not encouraged to talk about how you're feeling inside and how you're working with that. And I think that's a critical life skill, and it can be deeply enriching if we can become comfortable with managing the rise and fall of those thoughts and emotions that happen with us all, that are just part of the human experience. That's something we can take with us to bless us for years and years to come, particularly in times of anxiety. We'll be able to manage those thoughts and emotions that come and go and know we're not going to be overwhelmed by them. So now is an excellent time to take up a little meditation practice. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just sit and follow the breath in and out. And the thoughts and feelings will rise and fall, and we'll just take note of that without attaching to them. Stephen Batchelor talks about that as creating a non-reactive space in ourselves, in our minds, where we can kind of connecting with that deeper, higher self in us, we can kind of look at what rises and falls and go, I'm not going to follow that storyline today. I'm not going to follow the storyline of that craving, that have to have, that must do, that anxiety, that anger. I'm not going to follow that. I'm going to release that and go back to stillness and following my breath. And as we do that, we develop some skill in managing the rise and fall of that. Stephen Batchelor said he didn't learn how to do that until he went to the East. He went to India and he studied with Tibetan lamas, where it wasn't taboo to talk about thoughts and emotions that rise and fall. It was just part of the human journey that you just pay attention to, you acknowledge, but you don't let them throw you or overwhelm you. And that's a skill we can all build. What a wonderful time for that kind of practice. What a wonderful time to introduce our children to that kind of practice, to just focus on the breath, and anything that comes up then you share afterwards. No judgment about it, no worry about it. You just develop the skill of saying, I'm not going to follow that right now. I'm going to go back to what I'm focusing on. I think this is what Stephen Batchelor means by we can keep our creative freedom. We can build an inner freedom this way by cultivating that space in us where we choose, we decide what to focus on, what to follow, and what not to. But we don't exclude or resist it all. We let it all come in. It's part of who we are as human beings. So I thought I would share this little, very familiar reading to close out. It's by Rumi, the 13th century Sufi. It's called The Guest House. It's really about this experience. I know some of you really are very familiar with this. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I'll post that in the comments later if you want to look at it again, or you can Google it, The Guest House by Rumi. So let's just take that idea into just a closing prayer on this idea of being alone. As we close our eyes, we feel our own aloneness, our own deep connection to that deep self in us, that deep self that knows its connection with God, with that power and presence, that renewing life, that wisdom, that autonomy, that power to choose, God-given to us. Whatever rises and falls in our minds and hearts, whatever worries, whatever fear, anger, anxiety, we let it rise and fall without resistance, without upset, without being overwhelmed. It's part of the human experience. The thoughts that rise and fall in us, and all are okay. We are okay. We are deeply God-connected beings, human beings on having a spiritual experience here. We are always being guided by the power and presence of God in us. And all is well. So it is. Amen. Amen. Well, we'll have another song here in a moment. I'll invite Joe to come back over. I want to share a couple of announcements as always. No word yet on when we might be able to gather back at the church building. Maybe it won't be too long. We'll keep our ear to the ground on that. In the meantime, we'll be continuing to meet here in our home and connect in this way, which is a joy that we're able to do this. Thank you all for tuning in. It makes it really feel like kind of a community connection as we look at the comments afterwards and see some of the comments you're exchanging with each other. It's really a blessing. It's keeping us connected during this time. Joe will put the song titles, as he always does, in the comment section afterwards. In case you want to look those songs up, look up Eddie Watkins Jr., This is the Garden. What a wonderful, prayerful song for this time, or any of this music. Music is really a way of stimulating our creative juices. It was sure part of our rooms when we were kids, wasn't it? Everybody had music in my room. There was no doubt about that. As always, a reminder that we're Unity of Delaware, like all churches, is still relying on donations to continue in this time where we can't meet at the building. Expenses still go on. So want to express our deep thanks for all your generous donations coming in. So thank you so much for that. You can always do it by the link in our comment section today or at the top of our unitydelawareohio.org website. There's a donation link. And then I also wanted to mention our good friend Carl Anthony. He's been up to visit us 2 or 3 times, I think, from San Diego. He's doing a Facebook Live concert tonight, like so many of these musicians that we know and love. So if you're a Carl Anthony fan, I believe that's at 8 o'clock tonight. Facebook Live, just go to his Facebook page, Carl Anthony. So many thanks to Joe, as always, for making the wonderful music happen and for having doing the technical support. And thanks to all of you, and thanks to Buddy and Bella for putting their ties on this morning for church.
They're napping now.
That's actually their usual Sunday approach. Okay.
Here's an old fun song.
It's an old classic from those In My Room days, I guess, those teen rooms. But it's a little bit about, we're cultivating soul in these times of spending time alone. So there's the connection. It works.
Our Unity rewrite of the famous, what was it, the Ohio Express song?
Yes. Well, Music Explosion?
Music Explosion.
Music Explosion. Right. You'll know the song, so sing along. Little unitized. Now when you're feeling low and the fish won't bite, you need a little bit of soul to put you right. You gotta make like you wanna kneel and pray, and then a little bit of soul will come your way. stalled and nothing is grooving. A little bit of soul and it really starts moving. Yeah. So when you're in a mess and you feel like crying, just remember this little song of mine. And as you go through life trying to reach your goal, just remember what I said about a little bit of soul. A little bit of soul, yeah, a little bit of soul. A little bit of soul, yeah, a little bit of soul. A little bit of soul, yeah, a little bit of soul. A little bit of soul, yeah, a little bit of soul. All right, sending a lot of soul your way, sending blessings your way. Let's just do our prayer for protection together. We all know it. Let's pretend we're all linked up in the same room if we can. Together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And all is well. So it is. Amen. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We will stay tuned in. We will stay connected as best we can. And keep each other in prayer. Bye-bye for now.